What's up, everyone? In this video, we're actually going to be doing something very different for me, and I'm going to be showing you guys how I plan for Alliance War. I have been doing war planning for 5 seasons now, and recently we've been using this new website that helps a lot with it, so I've had very different stages of war planning, but I get a lot of people asking me for planning advice and people asking me to make a war planning video myself. And when this video is going to release to the public, it's probably going to be at the end of season 55. And I'm hoping you guys will be able to use this video for when season 56 starts. Hopefully this will give you some practice during the off season to get prepared for that, and I'm just looking forward to sharing my knowledge with you guys on what I think some of the best strategies for war planning are. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our planning website, which is called AW Masters. This has been a site we have used for the past 2 seasons. It is very helpful. It is very well organized. Basically how it works is that the leadership of the alliance is going to start their own alliance, and then they will send invite codes to all the players in the alliance to get their account set up and join the alliance on the website. And once that is done, players can upload their own rosters, and then the leadership can create the war plan, which will then be sent out as a link to all of the players in the battle group. So once you get all that preliminary stuff done, which should be started whenever you make your alliance on the website, at that point, it's just for the day-to-day war things. You just need to start the war by entering the opponent's name, which in this case, this is season 55, war number 9. So we have matched up against LOXC, and I'm going to type in the tag there and then press new war. Now what that is going to do is it's going to generate the plan, and I am going to be working in BG2 because that is my battle group. It's always been my battle group, and I am the lead planner for this one. And as you can see here, if we look at the top, we have a section that shows all of my players. We have a section that shows the current war stats and bans, and then players' assignments individually will be added here as we go through the plan. And then war section 1, all the fights, section 2, all the fights, and the same for mini boss and boss. So what you're going to do is put the defenders in manually, which I am going to do right now. And we're just going to speed run that process real quick because it does take a little while. You have to put 50 champions into this map. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll be right back when I'm done. Okay, and now that all the defenders are placed, I'm going to upload the opponent's bans into this section up top, which for this current war is Beta Ray Bill, Corvus, Deadpool, Silk, and Hulk. And so when you upload the bans at the top, it is going to make sure that you cannot use a champion that has been banned for attack. So when I type in Silk here, she is going to be grayed out. The ban system will prevent me from selecting her, which is really helpful for when you do need to not accidentally select the champ that's banned. Alternatively, the only thing that does cause concern sometimes is the site does not allow you to avoid using champions who are on defense for attack. There is no defensive setup in this website, so you either have to have a sheet of your alliance's defenders right next to you or have them memorized, which more or less I have my battle group's defenders memorized. Every once in a while I do have to check the pin I have in our chat to make sure, but generally that is taken care of. So next, it all comes down to assigning attackers at this point. The way I like to go is from top to bottom. So if I start from the boss node, I need to pick an attacker for Shocker. Now, I usually go with the defenders first that I specifically want to have one exact counter for. Like, if I were to make an example, a Shocker boss 9 times out of 10, I want to send Serpent to this. There is sometimes that I might send a Medusa. However, if I think that it's always going to be this specific character and pretty much never anyone else, I'm going to start with that and put Serpent in immediately, and we can always go back and change it if we feel necessary. So if Serpent is going to take the Chakra boss, I generally think that Serpent is going to be the best choice for this Prowler as well. And of course, it is important to note that all of these attacker choices that I'm assigning are what I think is best and might not be the best choice, because I know a lot of other alliances will plan very much differently than how I plan. This is just what I think is the smartest play, and that's what I am going to go for. So if we keep moving down the mini-boss section, if I see a defender that requires one specific counter, which I think the next one would be this Bullseye, this is always going to be an onslaught fight, pretty much. I wouldn't really say there's another champion who is great for this fight. In Decay, possibly, because of the Decay preventing some of the damage from Hazard Shift, but I feel like that is basically always going to be a onslaught fight. Likewise, this is pretty much always going to be a Luke Cage fight, because he is pretty busted with this attack tactic, and while Destroyer is not a tactic defender, we have such easy access to exhaustions anyway that is going to prevent a lot of the Hazard Shift damage, and the concussions will prevent Hazard Shift itself and a lot of Destroyer's kit, and the exhaustions and the concussions will work against Conflictor. So I think Luke Cage is going to be the best play for that fight, so we're going to add him right now. If I'm sending Luke Cage there, I think Luke Cage is also going to be the best play for this Enchantress, and so on and so forth. I think the best play for this arcade is Gallon. We have sent this before and it went successfully, so I'm going to make a Gallon go there. If we move down to Sasquatch, I want a Stealth Suit Spider-Man going here. Now here is an interesting thing. So Stealth Suit Spider-Man is a champion that you really only send to war when they are going to go with a Scorpion synergy. So what I'm actually going to do on this second tab I have over here, you can see my tabs are set up with AW Masters, and then this section of AW Masters, which is the roster section, and then my third tab is always going to be Khonshu's Ankh, which I might be butchering the pronunciation, but I use this site to look up champion abilities. It is extremely helpful. I use this one all the time. I cannot recommend it enough. I have Aunt May used over here as well, but Aunt May very rarely gets updates now, and I think this site is much cleaner anyway, so I use Khonshu's Ankh for basically everything, and it is extremely useful for war planning. Cannot recommend this site enough. So what I'm going to do over here is filter to BG2, obviously, select a champion, and we're going to type in Stealth Suit Spider-Man. I see that I have two Stealthies to pick from. One is Nico's, one is Infinity Legacy's. Generally, I've been giving Infinity Stealth Suit Spider-Man this season, so he is going to be who is taking this fight. And when I go to the top up here, we're going to see, once it updates, that Infinity has Stealthy assigned. So the only thing we need to do from this point is add the Stealthy Synergy, which we can see right here in this Synergies and Pre-Fight section. I'm going to select Infinity Legacy, submit it, give it a second to do its thing, and then we are going to add Scorpion right there. That being said, with a Stealthy and a Scorpion synergy team, it is a very viable option for this Prowler here, so I'm actually going to switch this to Stealth Suit Spider-Man. However, as we know, Serpent ramps up throughout a quest. If I feel like I need another Dread for Serpent to acquire, then maybe I will move back to Serpent for that 47 Prowler. It all depends on how the rest of the war shapes up. Remember, there's no problem whatsoever with second-guessing yourself as long as you come to a good solution in the end. So I'm going to be making a lot of changes that might sound solid at the start, but that's just how war planning goes. You make a lot of changes through the process. So, next up, I'm going to figure out any more mini-bosses that I think are going to be guaranteed this champion or that champion. For now, I'm going to write Spiral here. Spiral is excellent at fighting Serpent, especially on high energy diet. Well, That might not be the case because her beam attacks would get the damage not reflected but mitigated. So with Spiral, you would probably go for an SP3 in that fight, and I trust my Spiral player to handle that fight very well. He has a rank 3 Sig 200, which also happens to be Infinity, and I do know one thing for sure, that if we go down here, there is a Gore on node 35. What that means is that Gore on 35 is one of those other defender placements where it's like you pick one specific character and pretty much no one else to counter that fight. In this case, it's Chavez. Chavez is very good at fighting the Serpent as well. You just stick to SP1s and SP3s. I have done it before personally. It is a pretty good fight. So if I want to talk to my Spiral player, and if they don't feel confident taking that Serpent on high energy diet because of the fact they have to use SP3s and SP3s only, if for some reason they don't want to take that fight, I know I have a Chavez as a backup, which is also a good assignment for that fight. So we are big chillin' right there. Alright, so continuing on, let's cycle back to this Sentinel. So one thing I really like to use Conchu's Ink for is filter to the Alliance War tag, which we can see decay right here, and it gives me all the decay champs. So if I need a refresher as to which champions I have available to send to that fight, I can see it right here. And as I'm looking through them, I'm trying to see if any name really pops into my head as a great counter to this one. To be honest, I'm not seeing anything that specific that is really good for it. I know Luke Cage can do it if the player has max recoil and a rank 3 Luke Cage. We don't have a rank 3 Luke Cage in my battle group, which is, I don't want to say it's embarrassing, but it's very surprising that we do not have one because of how great Luke Cage is. And that includes myself, like mine is only rank 2. So I'm going to be looking into different options, and I'm thinking that might be a Stealth Suit Spider-Man fight. I'm thinking that could also be a Void fight or a Serpent fight. There are definitely multiple options that I can go with. Even Spider-Ham is a choice, but I'm going to cycle back to that one because I'm not exactly sure what I want to do right now. As for this Count Nefaria, I want to look at skill specifically, see if a direct counter pops into my head, because I've never seen this placement before, so it is going to be interesting to try to figure out which is the best play for it. I'm thinking Crossbones would probably be a pretty good idea. He purifies Count Nefaria's debuff, so he's going to place periodically pretty easily, and he's not going to get shafted by Nefaria's growing energy resist like Kate Bishop would. So I think that Crossbones is going to be the play I make for that fight. So I'm going to pick Crossbones right here. And I know a specific player who really is good with Crossbones and likes using Crossbones in war, and that is Wasif. So Wasif will be taking this Count Nefaria as of now. So let's just keep looking through the path section, see if I can find any more defenders that are solved by one specific counter. For Spider-Man Supreme, I think the safest play is always sending a buff immune to this fight, and considering he is on Hazard Shift, we want a decay buff immune. And one that I know for sure that we have access to is Cassie Lang, and my great Cassie player is Nico, so he is going to be taking that fight. And unless I want to path split, Nico needs to find a counter to this Spider-Ham as well. So for now, I'm going to try to find a great counter to that fight that can work as a path split. I'm going to filter to Nico's roster specifically, see if something really stands out as being a good counter to that Spider-Ham. I'm actually going to give him Kingpin for this fight. Kingpin is going to purify virtually all the Hazard Shift debuffs. He also is a champion that likes to spam his SP1, which is very good against Spider-Ham, because the more time you spend over a bar of power, the more spider nonsense that Spider-Ham is going to get. So if Kingpin likes to drop his SP1 immediately, which he does, then that is going to help avoid the spider nonsense. And it also works as a defensive ability accuracy reduction mechanic. So overall, he's going to be very good at countering that Spider-Ham, if I do say so myself. So we continue to move down the list, see if there's anything that I think requires one specific champion. And nothing too big is popping up right now. I'd say this Viv and this Iron Man probably will go to my Sig 200 Gladiator player. So I'm going to do Gladiator right here. And as you can see, if I go to the filters, when I type in Gladiator, we have a couple Gladiators to pick from. However, on Path 3 with maximum safety, if you want maximum safety, you want to go for this SIG 200 one. So I'm going to be giving this to my player Oracle, and he is going to be taking those two. Now, continue to move down the list. We have this null on node 18, and I know my Spiral player, who plays the SIG 200 version, would be able to handle this fight very well. So I'm going to actually put Infinity right here, and Mysterio is also a decay defender, so stealth suit Spider-Man is very good. Now that we know Infinity's Section 1, and we basically know his entire team, it's a good time to figure out where in Section 2 he is going to go. So if I look down the list and see something specific that I think he can handle with the team that he has been given, then we're going to go with that. Nothing seems incredibly great for Stealthy and Spiral, but I think he can probably handle this Path 7 relatively easily. If I don't like this, I can come back to it later and either make a path split or just don't give him a Section 2. So this is what we're going to go with for now, but it can change. Stealthy is definitely going to be very good for that Kindred. The Killmonger he could struggle with a little bit, but overall it's a fight that he should be able to solo regardless. So my Gladiator player has done both of these defenders before, and Gladiator is just flat out a good option for these two fights. So I'm going to write Oracle's name here. Please don't hate me, bro. I know you've been SIG 200 Gladiator basically all season, but you're so good at it, so what can I say? Okay. When it comes to Path 1, there is a champion this season that I really like sending to Node 10, and that is Deathless She-Hulk. She has the Fear debuff that is going to basically shut off Hazard Shift, and she is just a very, very, very good decay attacker overall. So we are going to go with that. This is also going to be an Onslaught fight. Negasonic Teenage Warhead also can go there. And if I look down at Path 7, I also probably want an Onslaught here. So that means I'm going to need 2 rank 3 Onslaughts, which is not a big issue, because if we go to Onslaughts, we have a lot of them. Now, this is one thing that is definitely going to come into play where you need to remember what your defense is, because I remember specifically that our Onslaught on defense is from Trickster, so I cannot pick Trickster for that specific, for those specific Onslaught assignments. That is something you're just going to have to remember until the site gets a feature that includes defenders. I think that's something that might come soon. My alliance mate MCoC Noob is an acquaintance of the owner of the site, and I believe that's something that they might be working on in the near future. It's just not something that's available right now, so I just need to memorize my defense as best as I can, and I remember that Trickster is our Onslaught. So I can use any of these rank 3s except for Tricksters, and I say rank 3s because if I can send a rank 3 over a 6-star, I will do it basically any day. So mine and Wasif's are just out of the picture, meaning I still have 7 to pick from. So we're probably going to cycle back to that, but one thing I do know for certain is that if I look at people who have already been assigned fights, which is Nico and Oracle and Infinity, I kind of cuts them out the picture. So not Nico's Onslaught, not Oracle's Onslaught, and not Infinity's Onslaught. That's not a guarantee. It's just likely I'm not going to be going with those. So if I look at Darkar, if I look at Ja, if I look at Heimat, if I look at Rageous, those are kind of the 4 that are on my head right now. And I think this isn't something you always need to do. You don't necessarily have to pick from a long list of options early. But for now, I'm going to look at the other fights in that path. In this case, very generic defenders, an Ebony Maw and a America Chavez. And I am just going to give the fights to two people I trust very well. And I trust my battle group very well. I think they're all solid guys who can solo a lot of things. But I want to give these two specifically to Heimat for this path and Ja for this path. So I know they're probably going to need a science option. If I go to the filters and click Heimat, we're going to look at his tactic list, which if we filter it to science, which you can do right there, you can see the options he has for tactic. So Deathless She-Hulk is going to be the one I'm probably going to go with. Reminder that Hulk is banned, Photon is blacklisted, and Deathless She-Hulk is just a very, very, very good decay option. So we're going to go with She-Hulk. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for Ja. Ebony Maw, again, is not really doing much on that node. So if we look at Ja's roster, which he does not have great decay options remaining. However, I know Mr. Negative can work for this fight pretty well. Mr. Negative is very good for Ebony Maw. And he can remove the placebos from tactic with no consequences just by dashing back, so this should be a pretty easy time for him. The only problem with Negative in War is the mastery on phase, but if I can help it and we only give Ja one fight and it's against an Ebony Maw who really doesn't hit hard, if he just runs like an invul boost, the unfazed really can't screw you over that much. So in the notes, I'm going to write invul. So he knows that he wants to use a gray boost that is an invul here because of the risk that unfazed, has. So, cycling back, I see that I need a Deathless She-Hulk for this fight. And reminder that, like I said, if I can help it, I want to go for a rank 3 specifically. So I'm going to look at my roster, see what Deathless She-Hulks I have, what rank 3s specifically that I have. I have mine, and I have Rageus's. So I'm going to put Rageus here for now, because I know he can do this fight very easily. And then if we look at Rageus's roster, let's find... Actually, no, we don't need to, because Deathless She-Hulk is going to be good for this fight too. Her Fear on her heavy attack counters miss, so Spot's not going to have any problem there. Cause any problems there. Decay is also going to handle the damage that Spot would be inflicting via ruptures or via his buff immunity, so I don't need to worry about that part of the fight at all. Okay, so I'm gonna go back up to the mini bosses. So I'm gonna write Infinity's name here because he is the stealthy player. I'm going to write Heimat's name here because he is the serpent player. We have a lot of serpents in my BG. However, his is actually, I think it's Sig 200. He just might not have updated it yet. We have Darkar's Sig 100. We have Wasif's Sig 20, which is actually on defense, and I think it might be a higher Sig than 20 now. So, realistically, I can go with Heimat or Darkar, but Heimat has been doing Shocker bosses for me with Serpent the entire season. I trust him to do it again, so I'm going to give him that. I have multiple onslaughts to pick from. However, the one I think I'm going to go with is Ja for this fight. And then Serpent, Heimat Serpent can take this fight if I want it to. We're going to cycle back to that. So let's figure out this Deathless Thanos. I'm going to go to the Decay tag and see what I think would be the best option for this fight. So I'm going to read over the list of counters that I can work with and just see if one really comes to mind. And I think the play I'm actually going to make is sending a Quicksilver. Because Quicksilver basically has permanent slow, that aspect of Thanos' kit and Decay itself is going to be pretty much negated. So, as usual, we're going to see what my best Quicksilvers are. We have Rageus, we have Infinity, and we have Wasif, meaning I'm just going to go ahead and pick Rageus. Let's keep looking at the mini-bosses and cycling down. I need a gallon for this arcade. What are my gallons? Let's go find that out. It appears we have a lot of them to pick from. I have sent Infinity to that fight before. Usually Infinity is my go-to option. However, this war, he is doing something else in that mini island, so I need to find a different Gallon. I think I am going to give this to Nico. So Nico now has 3 champs. Can we find an easy section 1 for him to take with these 3 champs? Reminder, it is Cassie, Kingpin, and Gallon. So we're going to cycle back. And nothing seems blatantly easy with that team in section 1 left, so we're going to leave that alone for now and come back to it. Or I can actually do what I'm probably going to do, and that is pick a different Gallon player so that Nico might be able to get an easier section 1. So I'm going to look at my Gallons. I see Trickster is still available. His is only a rank 5 though, meaning we do rank 6 if it's ascended. So I'm going to go with a player who has not gotten an attacker yet, and that is Darkar. So that means Nico has another team slot, and I noticed over here I can give him Cassie for this fight, or I can get him to go here because Cassie is going to be good for this fight. She won't have power sting damage, however she is completely buff immune, so there is pretty much no threat to the fight at all. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and that's something I'm willing to commit to. And I know that Nico has Guardian, so he is going to take that Negasonic Teenage Warhead with Guardian, and that means Nico's entire team is planned. There's not really something that I see him doing specifically on as a mini-boss, other than maybe that arcade fight that we gave to someone else. So, now we're going to go to Luke Cage's, because I know I need some of those, and I am going to give this to myself. I'm one of those people who trusts myself more than virtually anyone else, so I think that I can solo these fights pretty easily, and my Luke Cage is the biggest in the BG because, again, we only have rank 2s. The other rank 2s are Rageous and Nico. Nico is already planned for, Rageous for the most part is already planned for, so we're just going to stick with those for now. I think I am also going to put myself right here and give myself Gladiator for this Iron Man. And I am going to take this Onslaught with America Chavez. Okay, so coming back to this, I'm going to go and commit to sending Serpent to this fight. And also commit to sending Serpent to this fight. Meaning I have virtually every mini-boss accounted for. I'm going to send myself to this with Luke Cage. So now it's a lot about trying to get my my other sections in order. So my team is Luke Cage, Gladiator, America Chavez. Can I give myself an easy assignment for section 1? And yes, I can. If I go here, Luke Cage works great for these two. I mean, for that Spiral, and then Chavez for the Maestro. We only have one more section in section 1 to account for, but we do have a lot left in section 2. So we need to try our best to figure that out. So it's a matter of figuring out what is left. I know Darkar does not have a section 1 or section 2 assigned right now, so let's try to give him a section 2. I think I'm going to put him on path 6. So I'm going to look at his roster right here and figure out what he has that would be a good option for that bishop. I see Ironheart. I think that would be very good for that fight. And for a science option, Rintra is tactic defense. Maybe he's not tactic defense. It doesn't give him the icon, so actually I don't think he is. So I'm actually going to give him Morbius for this fight. And that is every fight assigned for. So what do we do at this point? We are going to fill these leftover team slots with some support pre-fights or support synergies. So let's start with Oracle. He has two team slots open. So I'm gonna go to Conchu over here and check Gladiator's kit. And let's look and see if Gladiator has any synergies that are going to be helpful for him. I think he can have a pretty good time with this Isophene synergy. He also has a rank 3 Isophene, so that is going to be helpful for him for sure. And then we have one more team slot, so I don't think I need Odin pre-fights this war. If we look at the map, the two hazard shifts that are mini bosses are one that Onslaught doesn't care about, and one that Decay kind of just makes irrelevant. So we don't really need Odins this war, but White Magneto pre-fights would be pretty useful. So I'm going to give him a White Magneto pre-fight. Oop, I didn't need to do that twice. I'm gonna remove that real quick. I just need to put it in the second slot. So he has White Magneto here. We're going to pick where that White Magneto goes. I think I'm going to put it here, here, and give the boss node a little bit more attack. Lastly, there is a Wags that I do want to go on this fight, but we're going to give that to Trickster. And the reason that Trickster is going to be getting Wags and placing it on that node instead of Oracle is because me and Oracle are CST players, so we have very common time zones. It helps schedule fights pretty well between the two of us. Whereas Infinity Legacy is playing from Asia, so his time zone is very different, and generally Trickster is able to help out much later in the day. So if I can get Oracle's pre-fights to help me on my fights, I'd pick him over Trick because Oracle is able to work with my CST time zone better. And Trick is also very good with the CST time zone. However, he doesn't have any mini-bosses like I do. So we are going to give him his one pre-fight on the Sasquatch, which will take effect later in the war. Because Infinity usually plays his fights a little bit later in the day than most people. So Magneto House of X there. We can write from Trick. And do we need to drop more pre-fights? We'll give one here. This is really just for extra attack mainly, but it is going to be helpful. And also extra attack for that fight. So that's about it. At this point, it is just writing notes for my players to help them with their strategies. I make my players write their own strategies, but if there's something I feel that needs to be addressed, just a little interaction that they might need help with, I'm going to put it in notes for them. For instance, fear counters miss, put that right there. And we're going to move down the list. PS1 power backs. Use SP3s. Don't die at all this war. No parry, no knock down when rock stacks are up. Invul. Use Gen or QS, either is fine. slow up always. He goes unstoppable constantly due to 300%. AA. Watch reference video from grass. This is also something that we need to address. Oftentimes there are going to be videos of exact matchups that are going to help your player out. I know of one specifically that is going to make this fight much easier if they see a strategy visually, so I'm going to send that video link in Wasif's DMs later after the plan goes out. So moving down the list, is there anything else that I feel needs to be addressed? Invol. Spam SP1. Won't stay in cloud. Talk to me if needed. Sometimes just an inspirational message for a hard fight helps a lot. And that's about it, guys. I hope this video was helpful for you. As you can see, here's all the player assignments. The way you send this to your battle group is by clicking the link here, and then you just get a link copy to your clipboard, and you send it to your players. They read it, they can see what they have to do, and just the one thing you do need to make sure is that everyone is communicating very well, specifically with pre-fights, so players can schedule when they are going to be placing pre-fights with other players so that everyone is not having a problem when it comes to boosting or anything. And also, me specifically, I do not let my players join the war map until 9 in the morning, which is approximately 16 hours after we match our opponents. The reason for this is just to, 1, make sure I didn't accidentally assign a defender, 2, make sure all my players are comfortable with the fights that they are taking, and 3, make sure that everyone has their fight strategies in their head and in my head too, because I want to read them to make sure we're not missing anything before we bum rush the map. So I think it's important to have a little bit of a time period for players to get ready for their fights rather than just jumping in immediately. Not every battle group does this. Our BG1 and our BG3 usually jump in as soon as the plan is ahead of time, as soon as the plan is completed. It's just not something I like to do. I like to have that little bit of time as an insurance policy, and that's just something I enforce in my battle group. So, if a player dies, what you would do is take this 3 for 3 attack bonus and change it to a 2. So you do that manually as a player commits a death, and then that stat would go up here. As far as defensive kills, you type that in manually here. So say we had 11 defensive kills magically, then we'd add that right there. So that's about it. You can put your own alliances bans in this section if you feel necessary. It's not something we do, but it is something you can do if you feel like it. And that's about it. If you won the war, press this. If you didn't win the war, you just press this, and that's it. So hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I hope this was educational to you all. If you have any more questions, I will be happy to communicate that with you, and I will see you in the next video.